Okay, I think we're live again, and it looks like chat's back up. I don't know what the problem was earlier. I guess I had this up and streaming for just I had everything set up, and I guess it was just setting for too long. It was giving me trouble. So I had a few questions that people sent me that I wanted just to discuss. So the first one was by Vinzeno DeSanti, and his question is, why do people think we are taking over the world? Hi, Jet Penny. How are you? Jet Petty, sorry. So the question is, why do people think that we are trying to take over the world? And I think this is more almost a psychological question than it is really like a mysterious question. So people, if they feel as though things aren't going as well for them as it is for other people, if they feel that some people are having a certain advantage over them that they do not have, even if it's just being perceived. John Rice, how you doing? Thanks for coming back. Even if it's just perceived, then I think somewhere psychologically we seek out a cause for that. And many people will not accept responsibility for the state of things in their own life. So for example, if I work really hard, or I feel like I work really hard, but I'm moving from job to job, and I see some people that have stable jobs and maybe they're being very successful, I might feel as though, you know, someone's out to get me or something like that, when really what it could be is, even if I don't understand it myself, it could be that the way I carry myself, or the way I behave, or the way I speak, or it could be my work ethic that is causing my problems. But instead of taking a look at ourselves and seeing what the issue might be, it's easier just to put the blame elsewhere. So it's the government. The government's keeping me down, or it's the Illuminati. They're just, you know, they're out to get me, or it's the Freemasons. You know, they're just trying to keep me from being successful. Or I would be more successful if I was a Freemason, or I could get, you know, all these secrets and have all this wealth and fame if I was Illuminati or something like that. And so it's kind of this boogeyman mentality, where instead of just saying, you know, maybe if I worked harder, maybe if I didn't cuss so much at work, maybe if I, you know, carried myself a little different, wasn't so confrontational with people, you know, the list could go on. But any of these reasons that could be keeping me from being successful, when instead I'm going to place the blame somewhere else. We kind of see this in other places in society too. You know, we blame different organizations and stuff. There's I don't want to go off on a tangent, but you know, I'm a historian in my Texas region, and I've seen the integral part Masons have played in the success of early Texas communities. You know, that's really interesting, because if you look in pretty much any Texas community, even the ones that aren't there anymore, you know, you might be driving down the highway. I'm from Texas too. You might just be driving down the highway and see just a random name on the side of the road, like a town name, but there's nothing there. At one point there was a town, and every one of these little communities had a Masonic lodge. But what happened is often they merged. So where I'm at, there's several small communities, and what's left of several small communities around nearby. And in some of these places there's nothing, you know, just like a ruins of a gas station or something like that. But as technology has improved, as highways got better, as vehicles got more common use, we got more centralized. So you start seeing, instead of going to lodge in this small area, people started going to lodges in these bigger areas, and they started merging together. And we're still seeing that in a larger scale now, because you have lodges in other communities where many have merged with them, but now they're having this issue staying afloat, and what they're going to end up having to do is merge with larger lodges. So as as the world got smaller, you know, by whatever means, be that the internet or automobiles or highways and things like that, as the world gets smaller, lodges got more and more centralized. So it's confusion. There's a cabal that does control the world. They are not Masons mostly. You know, I'm of two minds on that. I really, when someone says the Masons are trying to control the world, I think that's pretty silly. And people will say, well, you know, if you're not a 33rd degree Mason, you're not high enough up there to really know. And so really what you're doing when you say something like that is you're taking any possibility of anything I'm saying having any merit. Because basically what will happen is you'll tell me I'm not a high enough level Mason to tell you the truth. Or if by some possibility I was a 33rd degree Mason, I'm not, I'm just saying if I was, then I would just get accused of lying. So it's a lose-lose situation, and really you can't change anybody's mind on that. Now, does it seem like sometimes as though there's something pulling strings behind the curtains? Yeah, it does. I don't attribute that to like the Illuminati or, you know, obviously not the Freemasons or anything like that, but it does sometimes seem, you know, especially, I mean, look at world events now, they definitely feel orchestrated. I don't know by who. It might just be, you know, people in the government, but I mean, it almost feels, I don't believe in coincidence, and with that said, it almost feels as though it's masterfully orchestrated, whatever's going on right now. So, yeah, so early Texas communities, bar, store, jail, and lodge. Yeah, and often the store was the bottom floor of the lodge. You'll see this in a lot of old lodges that are still standing in many Texas communities. And I think I've shared a few pictures on my Instagram of lodges like this. But what would happen is you'd have a store downstairs, and it'd be like a 2 or 3 story building, and often it would be the tallest building in town. And the top floor would usually be the Masonic Lodge. And there was 2 benefits to this. First of all, you know, it was a source of revenue for the lodge because they usually own that building, or at least they were renting it out, so they weren't paying, you know, operating costs and everything. But if you're on the top floor, you don't have people peeking in your windows and things like that also. So that was another advantage of being at the top. The last number I heard of Masonic membership in Texas was 80,000. That sounds about right. It's we dipped below 100,000 not too long ago, and it's gonna, I don't know where it's gonna level out at. It's gonna level out eventually, but we're definitely. What happened was you had the baby boomers, and they joined in massive amounts, and now those guys are in their 80s and 90s, and you know, they're slowly passing away, and that was the reason we had such a huge number of people. Rothschild, Soros, Club of Rome, etc. You know, I used to follow conspiracies a lot when I was much younger. I don't know, you know. I would see people posting about conspiracies, and I'd always blame the Freemasons, and I was a Mason at the time, and you know, looking back, we can't even decide who's going to change a light bulb. You know, we can't figure out what day we want to have a pancake breakfast. So it's not us. People give us too much credit, and it's not higher. You know, it's not a higher level thing. You know, just to give you kind of a perspective. So I'm in my Blue Lodge. I'm a 3rd degree. You know, I've been Marshal Master. I've done all that stuff, and I've gone through the York Rite. I've received all those degrees. But people don't usually look at the York Rite, they look at the Scottish Rite, which goes up to number 33, right? So if I paid enough money to get all the degrees, which is not necessarily cheap because we're talking about what, 29 degrees if you get them all at once, you could just pay the Scottish Rite Temple up front, spend a weekend up there, and get 29 degrees over 2 days, and come out a 32nd degree Mason. And so if you're going to tell me, you know, getting, you know, 29 degrees in 2 days, you know, just boom, 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 degrees coming at you one after another. If that's enough to like indoctrinate me into something, then that's pretty crazy. But the it's definitely not enough to make you all of a sudden in the inner circle. And this idea like, well, you got to get that 33rd degree, that's not enough of a difference really either. So I mean, that's a 1 degree difference, and all of a sudden you're in this inner circle and you find out all this stuff. No, It's silly. So let me know if anyone's having trouble with my live stream. It looks kind of a little choppy on my end. I don't know how it's turning up on y'all's end. So John Rice, your 32nd degree. I don't know how long it took you to do it. Some people do it over a period of time. They might do a few here and a few there. But, you know, theoretically, if you had the money, you could just go to a Scotch Rite temple and get them all, you know. And so it's this idea that it's like a magic number that makes you a superior Mason and gives you all this inner, you know, secret knowledge is kind of silly. So another question that was asked me, this was, I don't know if it's a person or what, it was the Anthony Wright Network. So the question was about mentoring EAs, fellow crafts, and newly raised masters. Here's the thing. It's very important to keep people active and involved, okay? You can't have somebody show up to your lodge and receive a degree and say, okay, see you again in 30 days at the next meeting or something. Nobody's joining to show up for a meeting once a month to talk about fundraising and, you know, paying the bills and listening to the minutes and things like this. You need to have some kind of program or a series of programs that are engaging enough that you are doing things outside the lodge room. Okay, thank you, John Rush. John Russ. So, for example, me and some of the EAs at my lodge, we were working at putting together like a tabletop gaming group, and this was all before the coronavirus hit. But we were talking about, you know, a tabletop gaming group. We were also talking about maybe just a game group. These guys, you know, they like playing games and stuff. So, and you know, getting them involved in degrees, teaching them the work. Obviously, if you want to keep them engaged, probably the most basic thing you need to be able to do is actually teach them whatever work is required in your jurisdiction. The role was lost because of a pancake breakfast. You know, it's funny, but I think what happens. Obviously, we're not interested in any kind of world domination or anything silly like that. But I think the purpose or intent was lost because of a pancake breakfast, and that is, you know, the business of a lodge is to make Masons, and that entails more than just a degree. That entails, you know, education and you know, working alongside of other Masons and things like this. And when the focus shifts from that instead to doing fundraising and things like this, then you lose your focus. You know, any organization, every organization is created with some kind of a goal in mind. This is why we're putting this organization together. This is our goal. This is what we want to do. And as soon as you stray from what you actually started to do, what you set out to do, what your purpose was, once you stray from that, you lose your goal, you lose your focus, you lose your purpose. And, you know, it's you're not the same organization you started out to be. And so that's kind of what a lot of lodges are doing right now. That's what our issue is. Team 416, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Much love to you too. So, and I've talked about this before in some other videos. You know, this focus on fundraising is really what's harmful. One of my original videos, why I left Freemasonry. My most popular video. It's got like over 400,000 views. But that was why I left at that time, was because what I was told the lodge was going to do and what we actually ended up doing were two opposite things. It's the famously called the bait and switch. You know, we're going to tell you we're going to take good men and make them better, and we're going to educate you in all these things, and the switch is you end up doing fundraising and selling barbecue. My understanding of humans is that there's going to be a division and bickering in the top cabal, if there is one. And then John Rice, I'm a member of several organizations. Now, the Pythias gets more done than Masons and has better revenue and costs less per year. It's sad. I try to save a few lodges, but they don't want answers. So I'm curious. There's an old Knight of Pythias. I think it was a Knights of Pythias. It's an old, I think it was like an orphanage, and I don't remember what town it was. It's here in Texas, It was Knights of Pythias home. And I know they taught kids there. I think it was an orphanage or something. There's not many. I don't know if they met in lodges or what, but there's not many of those around here anymore. But I'm interested in how they have better revenue if they have lower dues. I'm guessing maybe they do fundraising or something. I'm not sure. But to the second point you're making is they don't want answers. That's the biggest issue. That's the hurdle so many of us face. Is no, if it's not the way it's always been done, then they don't want to hear it. And it's very frustrating, especially for younger people who the fraternity is trying so hard to attract. But these younger people that are coming in, and they're immediately met with resistance. They're excited. Yeah, it's in Weatherford. That's right. But sorry, what was I saying? Oh, so they're met with resistance. They come in with all kinds of excitement. They're very enthusiastic about the organization, and then once they get in, they kind of hit that brick wall. I have these ideas, and I'm not saying every idea is good. We don't have to adopt every idea. Some of them are going to be bad. I'm not saying that just because you get a new guy, you have to accept everything they throw at you. But when they're constantly met with resistance, and when in many cases it probably wouldn't hurt to actually have tried the idea, but when they're constantly met with resistance, they feel like they're not needed, then they're just going to go away, because that's one of the things they want to feel like they're making an impact on something. They want to feel needed, and we're just kind of dropping the ball on that. Weatherford, yeah, hey, I know Weatherford. Yeah, Weatherford, it's town, all right, that's for sure. It's kind of let me think. It's kind of northwest of where I'm at. Yeah, that's definitely where the Knights home is. I didn't know that they're still operating. It's a oh, it is. It's in a movie, The Littlest Orphan. That's cool. Yeah, it's a pretty neat place. You can tell it's not necessarily in its heyday. At least the main building. They did have like some dorms set up for the kids, and those were nice. That was a newer building. You could tell it was in good shape. I don't know if they used the castle for anything or not, but it's definitely a cool place to check out. They had a whole bunch of old stuff in there too, just like a lodge, a whole bunch of old Knights of Pythias stuff. Oh no, can't do that. Organology gets cut. I'm not sure, but that's anyway. So the other thing, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them out, because I only got one more. So the other question is about alchemy and Freemasonry. So I'm not really big on alchemy, and that's not because I don't like it or anything. I just have never had the opportunity really to do very much research into it or anything. I have studied some other things, but like Hermeticism and some stuff, and some stuff like that, but I haven't ever got to alchemy. So I can recommend a few books. One is The Secret Teachings of All Ages. That's by Manly P. Hall. It doesn't go into a huge amount of depth, but he talks about it. The other one is The Alchemical Keys to Masonic Ritual by Timothy Hogan. It's not a bad book, really. It's one of the first Masonic books I bought, but I don't really know how to say this. It's a very short book. It's a very small read, and really, gosh, what is this? Hold on, I'll tell you. It's about 50 pages long. So the formatting's strange in it, and the imagery isn't always high quality. It's not a bad book. I'm not saying it's a bad book, but just be aware that it's a very small book, and you may not feel it like it's worth the money, but it does cover some stuff. But I can tell you generally that alchemy has a lot in common with Freemasonry. Yeah, Manly P. Hall, he has some good stuff. The problem with these older authors is they very rarely cited anything. People like to talk about Manly P. Hall and J.P. Lightfoot and even Albert Pike. Albert Pike talked about a whole bunch of stuff in his books, but he very rarely cited or told you where he got his information, so you just have to take it at face value. But you know, as far as alchemy goes in Freemasonry, I can tell you from a basic perspective, you know, the concept behind alchemy was, if you look at it from a operative perspective, the operative purpose behind alchemy was to take a base metal like lead and turn it into gold. And so that really ties a lot. There was also, let me back up. There's also that philosophical side to alchemy, where you're taking the lead of that is you know, you as lead, and trying to turn yourself into gold. And we're not talking about like from a physical perspective, but almost like a spiritual perspective, a mental perspective, things like this. And that's very close to what we're trying to do with Freemasonry. You know, it goes back to the allegory of the rough and the smooth ashlar. You know, we're trying to so the rough ashlar is this stone that's unfinished, it needs work, and the smooth ashlar is what we're all striving for. You know, trying to be that perfect stone to fit the builder's use. You know, and from that perspective, alchemy and Freemasonry are a lot alike. They have a lot in common. And what you're seeing is, as far as that goes, yeah, we are trying to improve ourselves, become better people. Same thing with alchemy, if you're looking at it from a philosophical perspective. You know, trying to take that spiritual lead, I guess, and turn it to something more desirable, such as gold. Making physical gold is inferior to spiritual gold. Absolutely, I agree 100%. You can't take physical gold with you. Any good reads for a new Master Mason? That's a good question. You know, really, what I would probably recommend is, if your state has like a monitor that kind of goes into details and explanation of the degrees, that would definitely be useful. Texas has a monitor that has much information that it's not given in the degrees typically, because we usually do a short form lecture, but much of the information that is cut out of that lecture is in that monitor, and so it's definitely worthwhile to read that if your state has such a thing. Other than that, you know, some people recommend like Freemasonry for Dummies and things, and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. Let me look here. It really depends on kind of what your interest is. If you're interested in something that's more symbolic, you know, let me look at my library here. If you're interested in something more symbolic, then you might just read like the Secret Teachings of All Ages. You could probably delve into some Albert Pike if you just take it a little bit at a time. You know, don't read it like a normal book, because it's a whole lot of content in a small amount of space with that book. If you're interested in Hermeticism and things like that, then the Kabbalion, or Kabbalion, however you want to call it, that's a good book by the Three Initiates. If you, let me look. If you're interested in how to operate a lodge, I don't see it now. I don't see it. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of the head. But really, I guess I'll have to come back to you on that. I'll have to come up with a list, and I'll post that somewhere. Oh, what is that? Oh, Observing the Craft is a really good book. I have 2 new books if you're interested. I haven't read them yet. I just got them in today. I got a Traditional Observance Lodge by Cliff Porter and Operative Masonry by Kirk C. White. So I'm going to read those. I'm actually reading The Builders right now by, oh wow, I can't remember. It's an older book. I can't remember the name of the author though. But The Builders, it's really good. I'm really enjoying that book. So I would also recommend that one. It's more geared towards Scottish Rite Masons. I think it said in one of the inserts that it was handed out to people after they received a certain degree in Scottish Rite. But it is a very good book. It goes into a lot of explanation on kind of the origin of Freemasons, which I think is really good. So that said, that's really all the questions that I had before. I asked a few times if people had any questions. I didn't get a whole heck of a lot of feedback on that. So CW Chanter channel. Huh. I have to have a look at that. So, really going back to that original question about a book any Master Mason should read, honestly, whatever interests you, just find a book, a Masonic book, and just start reading it. And if you don't know what interests you yet, if you're newly raised and you don't know if maybe I don't want to know if I want to do the degrees, or I don't know how much I care about the symbolism, and I don't really know much about how a lodge operates or anything like that, I'd recommend just thank you, Jet. I appreciate that. I really do. But I would just recommend just grabbing some basic books, some basic Masonic books, and those are probably your typical. Those are your fallback authors. That's your Manly P. Hall. That's your Albert Pike. Oh golly, I really wish I could remember who wrote The Builders. If you can find The Builders, that's a good book also. But something like that that's really basic. I could tell you, Sacred Teaching of All Ages covers a lot of topics. I mean, every chapter is a different topic, and so it ranges from alchemy to the Templars to everything in between. So that might be a pretty good starter book if you're not just really sure what you're interested in. So I don't want to go off on a tangent. I was talking about this earlier before I refreshed everything, and I don't know if it came through or not. I'm not really sure what the quality was of that original live stream I tried. So, as many of you probably know, especially if you have any presence at all on Facebook or anything, they tore down the protesters tore down a statue of Albert Pike last night, or maybe it was the night before now. And a few nights before that, they tore down the Craft in its Symbols. Yeah, that's on my to get list actually. I haven't read it. I hear good things about it. But oh, where was I? So a few nights before that, they tore down a statue of George Washington, and there doesn't really seem to be a huge. It's a pretty wide net as far as what statues need to come down. And so I read an excerpt from George Orwell's 1984. I won't do it again just in case you guys already heard that or not. But the mentality, the idea behind it, really is this guy's kind of describing into this bleak future in this book. And what happened was, basically the government in power, they rewrote history. If it didn't fit the narrative they wanted or the beliefs that they wanted the people to have, it just got erased. So statues were torn down, streets were renamed, cities were renamed, anything. And if you said it was ever any way different, then you were ostracized. And here's my thought, because I love history. We don't have to. There's some really bad things that happened historically. There's some really bad history out there. Okay, look at the concentration camps over in Germany. What happened with the slave trade, that was terrible. All kinds of things before that, even from General Grant, who was a Union soldier. So, but even things that happened before the modern era. Historically, if you look anciently at some things, there was some pretty messed up things people did in ancient times. And so it's nothing new, but it's important that you don't lose sight of this. It's important that we are able to be in our minds. We need to be able to draw those parallels between what has happened historically and what is happening at whatever time we're living in. And if we erase our history, if we allow it to go out the wayside, then we don't have anything to teach us lessons. All right, Team 14. 4116 or 4. Thank you. Have a good night. 416. There we go. Have a good night. But history is here to teach us, and the lessons that it has to teach us, that it has to offer, aren't always pleasant. They're not always rosy, and those are probably the best lessons to teach us. You know, we should never repeat the Civil War. We should never repeat the things that led to the Civil War. But when you erase that history, you know, how long does it take before we forget what got us there, and we just repeat the same mistakes that we made hundreds of years ago? So I'm not going to harp on that. It's something that is sad to me. You know, it's a statue. Granted, statues could be rebuilt, they could be re-erected, but my big concern is, where do you draw the line? You know, where do you stop? Do you stop with statues? Do you stop with taking down paintings? You know, Brother Park's interred in Washington, D.C. You know, what's to stop them from messing with that? So it's a slippery slope. I won't go on any more detail on that, but it concerns me. So does anyone have any other questions or anything else on their mind that they want to talk about? We might just cut this one short if no one has anything else on their mind. Yeah, if you erase history, you repeat it. That's exactly right. That's the big concern. That's the thing about being a human, is we learn from our mistakes. We're supposed to. You know, we do something stupid, and the idea is that we probably won't do it again, or we hope we won't. You know. And but if we erase our memory as a culture, you know, I don't put my hand on the frying pan that's hot because I remember that it's hot, right? I know it from experience. But when you tear down your history, and you effectively remove that memory in a generation or two, and then, you know, I don't know that pan's hot anymore. I will say this on that same topic, kind of. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I'll say this. Speaking of this topic, many of us are at the point where we're probably going to be returning to our lodges soon. Here in Texas, we were able to start meeting again after May 25th. You know, so my lodge has had one meeting so far. And that was earlier this month. We have to remember our obligations to one another, and that is to avoid divisive topics. Not supposed to talk about politics or religion in the lodge. And it's hard when, you know, the big conversation now, the big chat, the big topic is of a political nature. But we have to keep that out of the lodge. We have to keep it away. It's very divisive. Here in rural Texas, out in the country, it's probably less divisive than it would be in like DFW or Houston or Austin. But it doesn't matter. So I want to be sure that we point that out. Keep our opinions in check at the lodge door. You know, we don't need to be talking about these kind of things. The no food thing. Well, they actually, the Grand Master, if I understood correctly, he issued an edict that they were going to allow us to start eating as long as we followed the restaurant guidelines or whatever. Yeah, everything is politics. I agree. It's all political. But I think as long as we follow restaurant guidelines, we should be able to actually start having meals at the lodge again. So I think we still are supposed to keep the mask on if we wear those, and avoid, you know, handshaking and things like that. Yeah. So anyway, that's probably all I got. This is the first experiment with a live stream. If I wanted to basically try to reach out to another aspect, you know, I have quite a few YouTube subscribers. I have a little bit less on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So I've done some stuff on Facebook, but there's a whole other aspect of the followers, subscribers on YouTube. So I just wanted to try this and reach out to whoever's interested. So I'm going to go ahead and call it an end here in a few minutes, and I'll review the video and see how good it turned out. But if this went well, if everyone enjoyed it, then I'll probably do another one. I'll probably try to do it bi-weekly, so about every 2 weeks I'll do a live stream or something like that. Everything is economics, the way energy flows around the planet and beyond. So what's interesting is everything, in my opinion, is cyclical. Everything happens in cycles. And it was a joke around the beginning of 2020, because in 1920, you know, that was a period that was characterized with disease and a bad economy, and so everyone was joking about that. And then 2020 got underway, and look where we're at. So I think there's some merit to this idea that everything is cyclical. And people laugh about astrology because there's no reason that, you know, where stars are should really have any influence on me as a person or how my day goes. But if everything is cyclical and the stars are in the same place when certain things happen, then maybe there is some merit to it. You know, you see a constellation getting at a certain point in the sky, and you're like, well, hey, you know, this heralds this happening or that happening, and it might not necessarily have anything to do with the stars themselves. You know, not any power of the stars, but just the fact that whenever that star, that constellation is in that place in the sky, because of the cyclical nature of everything, certain things happen. So it might be like I don't know. I said I don't believe in coincidence, but it might just be more of a happenstance, I guess. You know, it just happens that since everything's cyclical and the constellations follow a cycle, and the nature of civilization follows a cycle, then they intersect at certain points. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So I'm going to end it here. I have 7 viewers, and that's not bad. It's not bad at all. So I appreciate everybody watching, and like I said, I'll try to do another one in not this next Saturday, but the Saturday after. So thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.